Good evening, and a very, very warm welcome to the Open Door, the weekly webinar show that we do live here. I say we, it was just me again this evening, no Ian. Give me a hands up and a wave if you can see and hear me, please. Let's just make sure you can hear and see me. It's always useful, otherwise I'd just be chatting away to this little camera in front of me, and I have no idea that anyone's there. Yeah, lots of hands come up. Thank you very much. That's very, very kind of you. So drop all the hands. Yeah, he'll be back next week, Ian, so don't fret. He's okay. He'll be back next week. He's just having a little bit of a rest. At his age, I think he needs to. Anyway, those that don't know, look, my name's Richard Clapson, the company's property CEO, and this is the Open Door webinar show. It's great to have you with us, and over the next 45 minutes, we're going to be, as always, taking a deep dive into the world of small-scale property development and all things associated with it. But above all, and always, we've got to have a bit of fun doing it. I mean, it's a warm old day out there, isn't it? So you've got to have a bit of fun this evening in doing that. And even if you're watching the replay here on YouTube, you've got to have a bit of fun listening to this, even if it's cold and wet outside. Look, life is definitely too short not to have a bit of fun. I need you to join in, though. As I can see, you already are in the chat box. Put your comments in there. You can say anything in the chat box, unless it's particularly rude. I'll probably read it out. Pop your questions in there, and we will go through those as much as we can. So who have we got on this evening? Let's have a look. Looks like Ron's just joined us. Hello, Ron. Colin's on. Daniel's on. Patience is on. Hello, Patience. How are you? Dale's on. Dale, good evening to you. Con's on. Hello, Con. Mark, Dan, James. Lee's on, Sue's on. Hello, Sue. Hope everything's going well. Hopefully you are enjoying the program. So welcome. Raj is on, Andrew's on, Denise is on, Thomas is on, Caroline's on, Chris is on, Will's on, Emily's on, Sade's on. Sade, I thought she was a singer, wasn't she? Anyway, she's on as well. Look at that. Dear Adam, etc., etc. I won't read all the names out, otherwise we will be here a while. So welcome. Looking sharp, says Dan. Yeah, I tried to, I smarted myself up a little bit this evening. But of course, below the desk, maybe I've got swim shorts and flip-flops. You just never know, will you? You just never know. Good evening, says, good evening, says Adair. Andrew says, hello. Evening, sir, says Ron. Ha, 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 says Dan. Well, I suppose that's just a little flip-flop joke. I like that. That's very funny. Good stuff. Caroline says, good evening. No Ian again. Where is he? He's not here. He's just away, but he'll be back next week. Don't worry about it, Caroline. Caroline and Harjinder says, good evening, great to have you here. No worries about Ian, looking forward to your guest. Okay, well, who is going to be our guest this evening? I'll tell you in just a few minutes, but first of all, let me do a quick couple of news items, because I thought these were quite interesting. There's one here in planning, okay, and this was in the weekly planning document. Reuse of vacant commercial properties could allow 500,000 new homes. Very interesting. I mean, this is what we'd be saying, it's about the reuse of the buildings. It's about, I mean, if we look at, if we look at greenhouse gases and all those things, there's a huge, economical, environmental advantage by reusing existing buildings. And there's an estimate here, and who knows whether it's right or wrong. I suspect it's probably underestimated, in my opinion. But 500,000 new homes are able to be used from the converted existing vacant commercial buildings right now. That's a huge opportunity. This is why these new PD rights have come in, this Class MA, which kicks off in just a few weeks' time, which gives this probably the biggest opportunity that you've ever had to get into small-scale development. And so, here, there's 500,000 potential new properties waiting out there for you to go out and develop. I like that. And then two items here out of Property Week. I'll just do those together. Interesting. Office demand returns to pre-pandemic levels. I read that and I thought, no way. And then it said for Workspace Group, serviced offices. So Workspace Group are finding at the moment the requirement for flexible workspace, okay, is back to the levels pre-pandemic. And interesting enough to back that up, also in Property Week, Grosvenor, now Grosvenor is a big developer, Grosvenor is planning to scale up its flexible office brand across the country, across its estate. So they're getting, people are seeing this flexibility, they're seeing this disruption in the market. And so we often talk here about development, being able to develop anything, being the CEO of a development company. It doesn't mean commercial to resi is the only thing that you can do. You can develop some office space. You can develop some of this new demand that people want. Yes, the residential stuff that planning is saying, but why not think out the box, and why not be a true developer and develop offices as well? Turn offices into offices, as I often say. Okay, there's a couple of news items. Who else is so Tanya says, I hear 500,000. Sorry, I'm late. Well, yeah, yes, Tanya, you turn up late. It's not really acceptable. We kick off at 7 or 1 or 2 minutes past, but I'll let you off this evening as long as you participate in a friendly manner throughout the rest of the show. Rebecca's just joined us as well. Oni's just joined us. Yvonne's just joined us. People are still signing on. Pardeep's just joined us. Tony's just joined us. Well, welcome all you lot. Anyway, this evening, who have we got on? Well, we have got a great friend of the show here. We've got Paul Samson. He is head of property. He's a partner at a top legal firm, Dutton Gregory. And he was on actually about a year ago. It's about a year. I don't know why we've taken so long to get him back, because he was very well received with lots of questions. And I think this is pretty much, I think we put this out in the note, this is the only time you're able to get some free legal advice. You can ask Paul whatever question you want, and he will try and answer that. And tonight, I believe he's going to kick off and give us 3 top tips for new developers. So that's worth having. So let me see if Paul's available to come onto the show. Let's have a look. Let me just check. Paul, are you there? Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Excellent. Paul, can you pop your camera on? Do you know the day someone says they can't hear us, so that's going to be a bit of a problem. Paul's camera should be coming on. Hey, hello, Paul. How are you? Good evening. Welcome.
Yeah, very well, thank you. Just a tad warm. A tad warm.
It is a bit warm, isn't it? You should be in my air-conditioned studio.
Rub it in. Rub it in.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's the way it is. It's the way we rock and roll here. Give us a hands up. Give us a wave if you can hear and see Paul, please, in all of his glory. Hands are going up. Excellent. So that's good.
Hopefully they can't see me in all of my glory. That would be rather embarrassing. That's a different show for later on.
Well, it's a completely different show, and this is a family show, Paul. So we'll move on swiftly. Hey, good stuff. But Paul, welcome. Thanks for coming back on the show. And I just realised, I was just saying then to people, I think it's probably been about a year, so I don't know why it's taken that long. Maybe we keep inviting you, keep turning us down. So we're lucky enough to have you back here this evening. So
I've cancelled going to the pub for this, my friend.
Oh,
I could have been out, but no, I thought I can't let you down.
I feel really bad now. Well, it's not my fault. It's all these guests that log on and they want to listen to you and ask you lots of questions. I can see questions already coming in the chat box, so they want to listen to you. Paul, look, for those that don't know you, some will, but I imagine there's a lot of people that don't on here. Could you introduce yourself? Tell us who, I mean, I've said who you work for, but I'm assuming I've got that right. Tell us who you work for, what you do, and then I understand, because my team tells me that you're going to give us 3 top tips for new developers. Have I got that right?
You have indeed. I've got them scribbled down next to me to remind me what they were when I came up with them at 2 o'clock the other morning when I couldn't sleep because of the heat. Have I mentioned it's hot?
No, you haven't. No, you should mention that. Is it hot where you are?
Oh, just a little bit. I should explain. I'm in my office at home and I have to keep the door shut because my wife has this evil thing she's brought into the house that's ruining our lives called a kitten.
Oh dear.
And the kitten's always trying to escape or kill things or eat my dinner or eat my shoes or anything.
Or ruin a webinar show.
Yes, and that would be unforgivable.
It would be.
It's done plenty of things, but I couldn't let it ruin this.
Well, do you know, here at propertyCEO, we are cat friendly, so it wouldn't have bothered us. I'm not sure the cat would mix with the office dog that we have, but we'd have been friendly towards it. Right, Paul, tell us who you are. Office dog. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and give us those top tips. I'm sure we're hungry for that.
Hello everyone. Thank you for coming along this evening and not watching the 100 match that I suspect a lot of people are watching now. Also, the BBC tell us, so trying to big it up. My name is Paul Sams. I'm a solicitor and head of property at Dutton Gregory Solicitors, who are a leading South Coast law firm. But of course, I'd say that because I'm one of the owners. But we are. So there you go. It got to be true because I've said it. And lawyers never lie. I'll just leave that as a pause there. I have dealt with property for 20 years. I used to have hair. It wasn't the property market that's made me lose my hair. It's my kids. I'm pretty sure that they're responsible for that. I deal with all sorts of property on a day-to-day basis, whether that's residential, a little bit of commercial, predominantly developers. So I've been there, done that, seen it, seen where people made mistakes. And just for a quick plug, because I happen to have it here, I've got one of the many books that I've written. This is my latest one that I wrote with my colleague Rebecca East. This is a practical guide to new builds conveyancing. It's more aimed at property lawyers, but just to give you some background that I do really know what I'm talking about when it comes to development, because I've seen all of the mistakes. My particular favourite mistake has to be when I was a trainee a well-known Southampton celebrity, he was a former footballer, bought a 3-bedroom house and converted it into a 2-bedroom house with an ensuite. Now, under the small quirks that we have in England and Wales, the more bedrooms you have, the more your house or flat is worth, because we value things on bedrooms rather than square footage or square meterage or whichever size takes your fancy. Said minor celebrity footballer, after he'd converted it in his 3rd bedroom into an ensuite, then told his builders at the time, who are of Eastern European origin, whose English was not the best and neither was his, to fill the hole in the back garden. They were said, "Are you sure you want us to do this?" And he said, "Yes, just do it. I told us to do it." And he did, which was the cesspit in the back garden that they backfilled with concrete. Needless to say, when the cesspit didn't have anywhere for the cess and sewage to be, that then started coming through every orifice in the house. That's not the worst thing I've seen people do, but it's sort of up there where people make mistakes. Yes, that one always makes me chuckle, because turning a 3-bedroom house into a 2-bedroom house, he couldn't understand why he couldn't get the value back.
Well, and also he filled the cesspit with concrete, so he's just like a double whammy, isn't it? I like it, Paul. I like it.
He did really well. I suppose my first top tip would follow on from that, which is you've got to focus on what your buyer's going to want. And that's more, not so much of a legal tip, but I always try and give commercial advice to my clients, because if I don't, they'll come back later on as I mentioned Rich earlier, I was speaking to one of my developer clients. He's been doing development for 25 years, and he was moaning about the profit margin that he's getting now compared to what he used to be. Well, I used to complain when my hair was too long, and it was before my eyes. I don't have that problem anymore. But well, yeah, I didn't want to say, mate, but there you go. This guy built some houses, beautiful houses once, 4-bedroom luxury houses in a village just outside of Winchester. The thing was, he said to me, no one's built here for 25 years. And I thought, there might be a reason to that. And then he said the immortal line after he'd gone to the 7th estate agent to try and sell them, which I don't understand it, Paul. I built these fantastic houses in the middle of nowhere and no one wants to live here. People make mistakes because they build what they think people want. Don't build what you think people want, build what people actually want. So if you've got, for example, an office block that you want to use PD on and convert it into flats, you might want to check there's actually a market for flats in that area. Because as of the end of last year, flats weren't as popular as they used to be because everyone had spent their time at home wanting a garden. Now, if you've got a flat that's got a beautiful ocean vista, or it can see some boats, or it can see any water, or it's got a view over rolling countryside, brilliant. If it's looking at the back of an office block, amongst 1,000 other office blocks, just keep in mind there is a certain type of person that will buy that. They're probably a student, which means they won't buy it and someone else will. There's always a need for housing. So focus on the need of your end user. Now that sounds daft and obvious, but people don't, because they go with what the planning consultants told them they can get, and the planning consultants just been told get as much units out of this as you possibly can, because that's where I'm going to get my most money. But if you can't sell them, you're not going to get them out, and you make your money when you buy, not when you sell. In the perverse world of property development, it's what you buy it for, because that's going to be key. My next tip.
That's a good tip, Paul. I love the fact that your first tip has almost got nothing to do with legals, and that's what I like about you. When you get involved with developers, you're going to come forward with your opinion. You see so much development, and you see this happen so many times. It's not really a legal thing, but it's great that you can comment on it. What's your second tip, Paul?
Well, I should say on number one, I like being paid on the plot sales. So if they can't sell the plot sales, then we don't get that back. So that's always a bit of a problem. My second one is remember what lies beneath. So when you buy a house, contrary to popular, this is not my shed, this is a study of my house. It has electricity, as you can see. I'm almost doing a home buyer survey here for a surveyor, so apologies for any surveyors on the call, but I'm doing the obvious. It's got windows, test that. It's got fence certificate for the double glazing. It's got electricity, you might want to test that. But I know it's got electricity. I go to the toilet and flush it. I can get a tap and I turn it on and water comes out miraculously by this power. The problem is if it's a bit of land, I've seen people before. I remember years and years ago, I bought a bit of land for a guy that had planning. It was consented, it was to build a house. And he contacted me and said, there's no gas. I went, you didn't ask me to do a gas search. He goes, but why didn't you tell me to? I said, well, I did. On the 3rd of July, I sent you a letter, Mr. X, and I said, do you want to do this? And he went, I just want to buy the land. Don't bother with that. The agents had told me it's all fine. And the agents had apparently told him it had gas. Now, at the end of the day, I don't think not having gas is that big a deal anymore because we've all got to go to heat air source pumps anyway. But for some people, it's vital. And you've got to remember what's there. Classic scenario, huge developer, conglomerate, nationally based, one of the big guys, bought some land by the hospital in Southampton. They intended to build a 3-story underground car park. Somehow or other, between themselves and their solicitors, of course they blame the solicitors because we're the root of all evil, as you all know, they missed the fact that, no, but you were thinking it. I can read your eyes, come on. The ground workers, who happen to be friends of mine, then sent me a picture where they found this very, very big cable. And so the developer comes out and looks and goes, what's that? I went, that's the power supply to the hospital. Kiss goodbye to your underground car park because that isn't being moved. And that's a true story. And one of the biggest developers you could find made that critical error because those flats that they had that were going to be sold for, I think it was 200,000 plus at the time in the market, dropped to 130,000, partly because it couldn't have parking, partly because it was just through the recession it hit, so the 2008 time. But the second top tip I give as a developer, when you're buying a house, you know what it's got because you can go and test it. If you're buying something, even if it's a office building that you want to convert, just because it's got a boiler that heats it then, bear in mind the fact that it might not have a suitable supply for when you put residential units in it. It might not have a suitable supply for individual broadband units, which is now the key thing. We are very particular when we send out contract papers to say what sort of connection the broadband is and if it's connected or not. Because quite often my clients will have a connection there, but they won't connect it. And that can be quite a costly and complicated situation to sort out. But that's more from a buyer's side than anything else. But so my second tip, remember what lies beneath, because you don't know. So just be careful on that.
I like it. And number 3, what's number 3? This is going to be, I think number 1 and 2 was good. Number 3 is this is going to hit us hard now, isn't it? Number 3, go for it.
Well, again, it's not quite well, it does form part of the law because part of my job is to be a government enforcer. So I've got to check that I comply with our anti-money laundering legislation. Now, I have to warn you that our anti-money laundering reporting officer is a real cow. She is hard as nails and gives everyone a hard time, particularly me. She also happens to be my wife.
Oh,
and yes, she didn't forgive me.
The cat, her with the kitten.
Yes, yeah. When we were working at home during lockdown 3, I think it was, at the beginning of this year, she walked into the study, having heard from her room, walked in and said, did I hear those words of Lebanon, Switzerland, New York, London? She said, tell me you were talking about only fools and horses. I went, no, I just told the client it would all be fine where the money was coming from. Now, that was all fine. It was all legitimate. It was all explained. But when you go to buy, make sure you've got the cash. And don't say you've got cash if you haven't got cash. Because I've had it before when people have told me, we're buying cash pool. And then a finance offer will come in. And I'll say, that appears to be funding from a bank or a secured lender. And they say, yes, I said I was getting cash from a mortgage. Cash to me, is to most sellers, is money in the bank. If you've got cash coming from the sale of something else, that's not money in the bank. And of course, none of us, or maybe I'm just speaking about my own personal finances situation, tend to have much money in the bank because it doesn't make any money if it's in the bank. So when you come to fund things, be very clear, particularly to your lawyers, because I find it funny now, but it is frustrating when an agent's going, can you confirm that your clients have got the cash? And you're going, where is the money? Just tell them it'll be fine. I can't quite do that. I need to know where it's coming from. There are convoluted ways that people fund things. But if you want to get money, there are plenty of brokers out there that can get you as much money as you want. Money has never been so cheap. So in fact, I wouldn't buy anything cash if I could help it. I would put it on finance because it is so cheap. If it gets any cheaper, the banks will be paying us to take loans. So my third top tip is, when it comes to money, make sure you've got it organized and make sure you're transparent with everyone. You don't need to tell them that it's come from Auntie Gladys, that was your favorite auntie, and she left you this much money, and she's got a castle in Scotland, this, that, and the other. You could just say, I've got an inheritance and I've got the money in the bank. Would you like to see a statement to confirm it? Because the solicitor's going to ask for it, the agent's going to ask for it, and any seller these days, I always say to people, go, they're cash. And I say, like, yeah, where's the cash? Where's it coming from? Because they're not going to have a bag of money, because that's a problem. Because I was talking about this with one of my partners today. I can't remember the last time I went to a cash point. So I think I would struggle to remember my PIN number to get money out of the bank. And that's the story I'm sticking to my wife and kids, and I'm definitely not going to change it.
We don't deal in cash like we used to. I'll tell you a little funny aside, and people might be interested in this. So we can go off piece this evening, so Ian's not here to keep us under control. But I remember back probably 10, 15 years, I was sat in my office in Twickenham in London, and I was sat with one of my business partners. I owned the business, but I had a couple of partners. And one of the partners said to me, oh, so-and-so, wanted to do a cash deal with us. And I said, no, we're not doing that. It goes through the proper formal things. We'll raise an invoice. It comes in the company, properly dealt with. We're not dealing with big lumps of cash. We just not. And he said, no, I thought you wouldn't do that. And I said, no, absolutely. That's my values. That's what I stick to. My other business partner then burst in the door and went, oh, sorry, I didn't realize you guys were having a meeting. And he went, I'll leave that there. And he slapped down on the desk, no word of a lie, a brown envelope, all ripped, with bundles of cash in, right? And he went. And I looked at the cash, and my other business partner looked at the cash and went, and? And what we used to do, a lot of people know or don't know, my background is a structural engineering. This was my structural engineering firm. And we used to, every year at Twickenham Stadium, they used to put up a big marquee thing, and we used to have to sign it off. And a lot of the marquee companies, which born out of, dare I say, traveling in background, but they always dealt in cash. So there would have been about 10, 15 grand's worth of cash. And then we had to raise the invoice, and we did. They were all good on their paperwork, and it all went into the bank. But yeah, it's a day with a big pile of cash in a brown envelope. But there we go. I like it. Paul, thank you very much. 3 top tips. So, make sure what the buyer wants, as Paul says. Remember what lies beneath. I like that one. I think that's an interesting one to remember. And then, organize the money. And I think the important thing is be transparent. Don't forget the solicitor is on your side. Your solicitor is on your side. So just tell them everything, and then you'll be absolutely fine. Right, Paul, are you ready for a few questions?
I am. He says now confidently.
Okay. Well, let's see what Kirsty has to say, because Kirsty was the first one to put a question in the chat box. And she says, I like this one. I'm reading ahead. I guess I should read it out. It would make it easier, wouldn't it? Kirsty says, how can you find out whether a solicitor is any good? What questions should you be asking? What about that? That's a good one.
You could ask them if they're any good. That's always a good start. I know that sounds odd, but if you actually ask them and see how they responded, because if anyone asked me if I'm any good, I said, well, I've done this for 20 years. I think I'm okay. I lecture other lawyers on how to do their job. I'm retained to speak at various events. I do things like this. I've got a long list of clients. Some of them have followed me from the very start. I get recommendations from other clients. I've written 4 books. I'm well known for what I do.
Kirsty, I think that is a spot on answer. And I think when if you come across someone, and I'm not suggesting you can easily do this, but someone of Paul's caliber in this industry, written books, speaks at events, trains other lawyers, okay, then that's that. You've got someone of the right caliber. Now, you might not be lucky enough to find someone like that, well, in which case then find Paul. He's here, talk to him. But I would say then in that respect, then just go, as Paul says, he's been in this business for 20 years, 25 years. Well, just say, okay, can I have a chat to some of your clients? And if you go and chat to someone else's clients, they say, oh, yeah, he's great. That's the best way. Just talk to people that are using this individual. And if it's a local individual, And I mean, I can tell you, Paul is not based a million miles from our office here in Hampshire. And if you ask out and about locally, does anyone know Paul Sams? Most people do. Most people do, and it's generally fairly good. I hate to say this because I don't want him to get too conceited, but it's generally pretty good. One or two bad things, but mainly pretty good. So, Kirsty, if your wife, yeah, well, it was. I have to say it was, and she's put something in the chat box as well. But we'll ignore that for now. But what I would say is, if you go out and then no one's heard of this solicitor, then maybe move on. Okay, next question. Hopefully, Kirsty, that has answered your question. Let's do Dave's question next. Dave says, do you need to use a specialist solicitor as a developer? So do we need to have I introduced you this evening as head of property at Dutton Gregory. Do we need to have that specialist or not?
Well, I'm obviously going to say yes, but I'll tell you the reason why I say yes, because it's a different mindset from buying a residential conveyancer to a developer solicitor. The mindset is a residential conveyancer, and this is the easiest way to put it, thinks in 2D. They get a red box on a plan, and that's what they see. Whereas a developer solicitor sees in 4D or 3D, depending on how sophisticated their glasses are and what time of the day it is. But it's the what lies beneath bit. When you're just buying a residential property, you don't worry about the fact it's got gas, water, and electricity. When you're buying for development, you need to know how that gas, water, and electricity gets there. Otherwise, your underground car park for a large block of flats isn't going to get built, or your right of way is not going to get built, or worse still, you're not going to be able to lay your foundations because you're over a gas main. So it's knowing those little niche bits. It's knowing the fact about that you need to think about how you're going to get in and out of the property. I know that sounds really obvious, but you will be surprised. I'm looking at something for one of my colleagues in litigation where I've got to give an opinion on it for our client's insurance company who are funding all of this, where they don't appear to have a right of way to their front door, and they've built a house there. And their argument is, well, we've got all the materials up and down the lane, but our neighbour's now objecting. Well, yeah, they probably are, because it's probably taking the materials up and down the lane that's caused the problem. But people don't, well, on residential matters, and this is not knocking residential lawyers, because I look after a huge team of residential lawyers that are brilliant at what they do, but they're doing the here and now, moving someone in from A to B. You're doing on a residential development, or even a commercial development, you're doing A, B, and then C, because at some point you're going to sell it if you're a developer. And it's the sale where you start getting your cash back. So it's all important that it goes swimmingly.
Okay, Dave, there you go. I think the answer is yes. And I agree with that. I think it is a definite yes. Okay, here's one on utilities. I just spotted this coming in. Tom says, accurate? Sorry, I think this is how accurate are surveys for utility searches? I've heard this can be problematic. I think that's probably picking up after your story about the cables across the site of the hospital. So how accurate are utility searches? And if they're not accurate, where does that leave us as a developer?
Well, it's a very good question. The one with the hospital was pretty obvious because the hospital's been there for a long time. So if they'd actually done the search, they'd know it was there. I always say this you get people, if we give a quote for someone that's buying a new build property, as they're going to buy from Persimmon, Barrett, other developers are available, and they go, my other solicitor said I should do a drainage search. And I said, why? If you do a drainage search, there's no drains there because they're building it now. It's going to take them 12 months to show up. It's the same with gas, electricity, BT, fibre optic, you name it, that's there. Provided it's been done in the past 12 months, it will show. And if you're doing it for development, I'd say they're 95% accurate because the site has been pretty well established. For example, where I live on the A36, right on the road, because then no one can park outside. That was my only criteria for a house. I didn't want people to be able to park outside. Long story, I won't bore you with it. But we've got no fibre coming up our end of the road. We just know that. But if I did a search, the search would confirm that because I happen to know where it ends, but the search would confirm that. If I was in a built-up area, say the centre of Southampton, I'm pretty sure I'll be able to find a fibre connection fairly close to any building because of just the very nature that it's a cosmopolitan basis with lots of people and businesses. So I'd say they're about 95% accurate. When they go wrong, insurers insure the searches. All of the searches I use have got insurance backed on there. So if there is a problem caused by loss from the search, I've never had to make a claim on one, but that insurance is there just to give you extra peace of mind.
Okay, good stuff, Tom. Good question. Okay, Thomas has got a question. Paul, which says, I'm glad he said Paul because that's who's on here this evening. So he says, Paul, do you have any top tips for structuring option agreements? Got a couple of comments you can make on structuring option agreements?
Now, it's very interesting. I have someone in my team who's downright fantastic called Abida. She tends to deal with most of our option agreements. She was ripping apart one of mine earlier today, which is very nice of her. But when we were looking at various things today, I always said to her when we started working together a couple of years ago, what does your client want to achieve and what do they want to protect themselves? So saying how it can be structured, it all depends on what the end goal is. For example, I have some guys that I act for who very, very, very rarely build things out. They get an option, they get the planning, which they're really good at doing, and then they flip it on. And they'll flip it on by selling it the option at auction, or they'll flip it on by finding an end buyer, because there are plenty of guys out there who want to buy it, might even be some of you, because they've done the legwork, they've got the planning, they're getting the turn on it, but they don't want to go to the hassle of building it. All of their options are assignable. I always make sure all of my options that I do for buyers are assignable. And they go, oh, I'm definitely going to build it out. I said, yes, but what happens if, oh no, I'm definitely going to build it out. And I gave a scenario to someone. He and his wife were developers. They're very successful, had a track record of doing it. His wife fell terribly ill. He needed to dedicate all of his time to dealing with her, but he needed money out of it. I said, well, assign the option because you've got that ability to do it. And he was like, oh, I can't do that. So, well, it's assignable. I've made it assignable. That's a little bit that I put in about options because they're very complex, but you can make them as complicated as you want them to be. But ultimately, all you're doing is getting that opportunity. An option is an opportunity, and you just want to make sure that you can exercise it on the terms that you want. Again, quick story, major developer I know had an option for some land. They wanted to take the option. Their group company, because although they're a local huge national developer, the group director said, no, we don't want to build there anymore. We built too many houses there. Don't take the option. And the seller said, okay, when do I get my 10%? And the developer said, but you're only getting 1%. You went, no, my solicitor made it. If you pull out because you've got planning, then you've got to pay me 10%. And they said, well, hang on, no. It's planning that's suitable to us. He goes, it's not what the option says, and produced it. And the option actually said, if you get planning, you pay us 10% if you pull out. Now, that was £1 million they had to pay out because they hadn't read the wording. All it needed to have in the option was, if we get planning, that is suitable to the buyer or acceptable to the buyer or any discretionary term to the buyer, but it was missed.
I guess here, we always say to our students, any option agreement, I think, but as you said at the beginning, understand what you want out of it, understand what the other side wants out of it. And I always say to people, write that in layman's terms between you and the other person, and then go to your lawyer, because then in your plain English, you said what you want, what it is you're trying to do, and your lawyer then should put that agreement together. Don't just download a template that someone's given you and use that. Get it done properly. Okay, good stuff. Let's have a look what's next. Dave, by the way, said, thank you for the answer on specialist solicitor. By the way, can I buy your book?
Yes, available from Amazon and all good bookstores, but Amazon you can generally get it quite quickly for obvious reasons.
I'll tell you what we do, Dave, and anyone else. Paul, if you let my team know, just give us a link for your book or something. We will put that in the show notes on YouTube, guys. So if you want to grab a copy of Paul's book, if you're struggling to get to sleep one night, maybe it's a useful read that'll just get you to nod off at the right time, then please grab a copy of that. I'm sure it's not hugely expensive, but yeah, go and invest in that. Okay, I saw a question down here about freeholds, and I know you've talked before about freeholds. Let me pick this one up. Jamie says, what's going to happen to freeholds? Are they still going to be able to be? Are we still going to be able to sell them, or will the government ban them?
Right. This is where I fall out with a lot of my lawyer. They're not friends, loose associates. The government will not ban freeholds to blocks of flats for this simple reason. They want to bring in common hold, which, as you know, or what you may not know, there's three types of tenure you can have. Freehold, you own it forever, it's yours. Leasehold, You own it for a finite period of time, well, not yeah, for a finite determined period of time, 99 years, 999 years, whatever it is, 9,000 years if you want it to be. Common hold, you own it, a section of it within a communal area. And the communal area, so the wrapper for the building, if we call it, what would have been the freehold, is all dealt with in this wonderful common hold agreement, where you all live in perfect harmony and never have any disputes. And you'll always pay, and no one will cause any nuisance to their neighbours, and it'll all work fine. And that is why there are 254 common hold units in England and Wales, and there are 267 books written about common hold. And until any major mortgage lender, because no major mortgage lender will lend on them, and any major developer will use them, because no mortgage lender will lend on them, common hold will not happen in this country. On top of that, complete aside,
he's on a rant, guys. He's on a complete rant, is Paul.
Very quickly, guy I know in London who is a sales director for a very successful national developer, he was selling to a leading MP who's been banging the drum about getting rid of freeholds and getting rid of ground rent. This was good 3 years ago. Said MP is buying a leasehold flat, and he goes to the developer, Danny, you are going to pay my ground rent for the next 6 years. And he goes, very important MP, you tell me you were banning it. Excuse my language, I know it's a family show. MP replies, bollocks, it's never happening. So I'm just going off that aside there. I just can't see it. The other thing to bear in mind is the fact is the common hold system requires a common hold commissioner to deal with any disputes. Well, there isn't one because they haven't created a common hold commissioner or a common hold ombudsman. And I'm considered to be a reasonably good lawyer. We're a great firm. I know lots of other reasonably good lawyers at great firms and some great lawyers at some reasonable law firms. They wouldn't have a clue where to start in drafting common hold. A quick plug for my new book on leasehold, because I'm doing the second edition of that. There will be a new chapter on common hold where I have to update it because there have been a few more books written about common hold since the last time I took a mickey about it. So in answer to the first question, we're going to continue with freeholds for the foreseeable future.
So the answer is yes. And Jamie, thanks for getting Paul to swear on the show. And I do apologise to all of our viewers and anyone that's listening to on the replay for Paul's potty mouth. I'm sure it will not happen again. Okay.
Sorry.
You're okay. It's fine. It's a family show. I told you it's a family show. You just never know. My mother could be listening. I mean, imagine that. She's never heard such language. Okay, let's have a look here. Tanya says, let me read this out. We're taught to build our team before the deal. What do we need to do to get a solicitor to be in our team? What are you looking for? So if Tanya wanted to have you in her team, what are you looking for to be on Tanya's team?
There are lots of answers to that question. Some are politically correct and some aren't, but it's a family show, so I won't do it. I think when I look at clients, I'm quite lucky because I get to pick and choose who I act for, because we get a lot of work. I've got a lot of stuff that comes to my door, and I get to choose quite often who I'm going to act for. And if I find I've got a rapport with the client, that's great, because if they don't like me, I'm probably not going to like them. And it's really important that you can get on and have a frank conversation and that you can work out how you want to work. For example, I've got one of my guys at the minute who's a developer who's doing a refinancing deal, and he's quite keen to get things over the line. But he and his PA, because he's abroad at the minute, are emailing me at different times of the day saying the same thing, and they're not speaking to each other. So when I email them back, I sort of like, look, could you talk to each other? Because they're sort of like a married couple, but not married. But if you could talk to each other, it would save me 2 emails and one of you getting frustrated because I've gone back to the other one first and things like that. I think when clients are looking for who they're going to get on with, they need to just check that they can build a rapport, because any solicitor you go to that says they can deal with development work, I'll let you into a secret. They probably can. Some are better than others, but we are qualified and spent some time to get to the state that we're in. Some states more than others. But it's the rapport and the ability of the person when you speak to them. Do they make you feel confident? Do they make you feel okay? I had a lady that came to me, sort of a development thing. They own a big manor house. Different parts of the family live in different parts of it. And they were told that they couldn't get a residential mortgage against it. I said, why? She goes, because my mum owns it and she's got a big equity release mortgage and the interest on it's killing us. We want to refinance it. So, well, have you spoken to a mortgage broker? She goes, yes. I said, well, I can separate up the property for you. It's not a problem. And she went, our family solicitor told me he can do that. I said, well, I don't know why not. And she said, well, we've used him for 30 years. And I thought, well, that might be part of the reason. But some people just don't want to actually think. I don't believe in thinking outside the box because there is no box. It's just anything that's done by a human being can be undone by a human being, apart from death. But Rich and I are working on that constantly.
We are very much so. Tanya, there you go. So, Tanya, I really leave it up to you to see whether you can go and get on with Paul. And please give us some feedback on the show for future episodes and let us know. And in fact, let all the other listeners here know how you get on. James says, would a good solicitor review a purchase and suggest the type of deal option that could be constructed to make a deal more workable or better for the vendor and the purchaser? Would you better sort of give them some suggestions of how they could put a deal together? Are you a bit of a deal maker?
I am, yes. Not everyone is. I like to look at things and find out why a client's doing something. So I'll ask them, why are you doing this? What's your end game? I always want to know what their exit strategy is. And a lot of people buy things without knowing, going, oh, well, I'll come up with something later on. No, you need to know now. So you're buying this commercial building and you're intending to convert it, or you can convert it to all 1-bedroom flats, 2-bedroom flats. How are you going to deal with the parking that's there? How are you going to deal with this? Have you thought about saying to the seller, look, I'll buy it now without planning and I'll give you this price, but if I can get planning, I'll give you an overage and give you an uplift. Those sort of things, I like being creative because it's boring otherwise. And giving people commercial advice, my profession is not very good at doing it. I like to think I just give common sense advice, because you get people that come in and go, this is what I'm going to do. And I say, it's rubbish. Some of my developer clients, I've had them and I said, that site is, bad swear word, and they'll buy it and they do really well. Like some guys I know, they did a site on the Isle of Wight. It was passed up by a major developer because there was no parking. But because they knew someone who knew someone that an NCP car park was being built across the way, they went to NCP and said, can we get a 5-year parking permit for 14 houses and flats? And they went, yes. They paid up front. It cost them the same cost as 1 year's worth of parking. They gave it to the buyers. And the buyers thought, I've got a parking space. They hadn't really. It was all completely disclosed to them, but they sold those properties for really good money. Because the buyers were like, I don't care what's happening later on. There's parking there. There's a deal to be done. But they saw through it. But I told them it's rubbish because there's no parking. And they went, but. So when they came back and said that, I was like, you're a genius. And then we all went to Dublin and had a very good time off the back of it.
I love it. I like it. Dublin, what a great place to go. Good stuff. James, hopefully that answers your question. Ronak says, do you have a Chinese wall in your firm for option agreements?
Simple answer, no. We wouldn't do that. And to be politically correct, it's no longer a Chinese wall, it's an information barrier.
Good. Do you know, I'll tell you what, that's unlike you to be politically correct. You've been swearing and potty mouth all throughout the whole show.
I know. I'll be doing compliance next. It'll be quite worrying doing that. But we always send people for developer and seller, always go elsewhere. I had a friend of mine recently who's done a development and said, I'm going to act for myself, but could you draft all of the paperwork and your colleague Rebecca act for the buyer? I went, this isn't really going to work. I said, we could, but she's going to ask you some questions and then you're going to come to me for the answers. And then she might come to me for an opinion on it. And I can't really say it's all fine because I've drafted it. So I said, what I'll do is I'll put everything together that you need and you pick another solicitor and they've got it and they've got a pack that they can pretty much send out, which is what's happened. But yeah, we can't act on both sides of things. There are lawyers out there that will do that. All I would say is it is very questionable under the ethics if they do. And I would suggest that you don't, because there's always a chance of a conflict of interest.
Yeah, right. Information barriers, not Chinese walls. Let me pick one more question because we're going to run out of time otherwise. But let me see what we've got here. Let's pick this one up. Where's it gone? I've just scooted over it. Sorry, here we go. Do you think that we need to give personal guarantees to commercial funders? Is there a way that we could avoid this? And why is it necessary?
PGs, our favourite. They commercial funders won't give you the money unless you give you a PG. It's really rare to not give a PG, unless we've got some clients who are very fortunate. They're very wealthy. They're very good at development. They use Lloyds Bank, and Lloyds never wants them to give a PG. But then they said on a site, if you give a PG, we won't charge you this admin fee, nor will we charge you for a quantity surveyor to come in and look at it on top of the loan. And giving the PG would save them £10,000 worth of costs. And it's not like they didn't have the money, because one of them could have sold his new Porsche to cover the cost of it, which he bought without finance. Most lenders are going to want a PG. They're getting more and more strict on what they want. So it might not just want a PG. They might want to have a mortgage over the shares in the company, so you can't sell the shares in the company. That's becoming more prevalent. They might want a debenture against the company as well as just giving you the loan. That's becoming more prevalent. It's a case of, if you want the money, they'll ask you to jump and you say how high and do you want 2 sugars in your tea. As long as you remember with a PG, as long as you've got the money to cover it, you're okay. One of my litigation colleagues asked the other day and said, if you were acting for a lender pool, would you advise them to credit check the person that's giving the PG? And I said, well, probably we should. I said, did we act? He went, no. Good. I said, that's okay, then we can give this advice. I said, you probably should. But I said, at the end of the day, being brutally honest, if someone's given a PG for £100,000 and they haven't got the money, they're probably insured for that if they die. So your worst case scenario is they're going to die and you're going to get your money, or they've got time to pay it off. But the thing about PGs to remember, of course, is that if you default on a loan, they don't just repossess the land or the site and then sell it. They can just come straight to the PG and go, give us the money, and then issue proceedings from there. So they are quite scary. We do charge for giving advice on them. We do a lot of advice on them. We've got a slick system for doing it, because essentially I just say to people, be prepared to give up all your bodily organs in return for the PG. As long as you're comfortable with that, it's fine.
I think the great thing is, I always say to students, you should be confident in your numbers. And the minute you're confident in your numbers, you'll go PG, absolutely no problem at all, because you're confident that you can deal with it. Good stuff. Excellent. Well, that is great. Paul, I think we've run out of time, and I do apologise. There's a lot of questions on here that you guys have answered that we can't get to. Although Tanya says, can we have Paul back on again? He's very funny. I don't think that means you're very good. You're just very funny. So it's a compliment, I guess. I guess that's a compliment.
I'll look, at my age, looking like this, I'll take anything.
I would take it. I don't know, Paul, whether just as an outside chance, you haven't written a new book or anything like that recently. Is there a book that you want to mention?
The only one I've got is my leasehold book will be out later this year, which will be the 2nd edition of the said book, which will be the old book, but completely rewritten. There will be a few words in there that remain the same, like the and leasehold, I expect. There will be a chapter on common hold, but that will be expanded somewhat, so you can see me rant some more. And the steam will come off the back of the book once it gets to the common hold section, no doubt.
I can imagine. There we go. Look at that. Heavens forbid. Who would have known you'd had a book? Right, great stuff, Paul. Well, look, contact details. If people want to contact you, what's the best way to do that?
Best way to do it, if you go to our website at www.dutton, D-U-T-T-O-N, Gregory, Gregory.co.uk, you can look at my pretty picture on there, which is the only picture I've ever had taken that I like, which was done for the charity I'm involved in, and all my contact details are on the website.
Great stuff. And Paul, if you can let our team have that, guys, we will put all of Paul's contact details. We'll give you a link to his wonderful book on Amazon, and you can then look at that and enjoy that at your own leisure. Paul, thank you for coming on. We'll maybe not leave it so long next time. Great value as always. Hopefully people enjoyed it. Give me a hands up. Give us a wave if you enjoyed Paul on this evening. I thought no hands were coming up. All hands flying up and down. Brilliant. Good stuff. That's good then. That's good. Paul, thank you very much. I'll let you enjoy the rest of your evening. I don't know, maybe you've got a bit of time to go down the pub if your good lady will let you. If not, go and play with the young kitten.
Yeah, something like that.
All right, my friend. See you soon. Thank you, Paul. Cheers now. Right. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Wow, that was great, wasn't it? Hopefully you enjoyed Paul. I did. And I think, as Tanya said, he's very funny, isn't he? You know, for a lawyer, you don't get that many funny lawyers. But he is great to deal with. I think, as you can see, he does definitely know his stuff. Please let us know in the chat box as we wind up the show if you've enjoyed the show. I always like to see that, particularly when I'm flying solo, you know, and then I can let Ian know it's probably one of the best shows that we've ever had. If you feel that, then please put it in the chat box. If you don't feel that, put it in the chat box anyway, just to humour me. Next week's show is Thursday the 22nd, obviously, the same time at no, it's not 22nd today, isn't it? It's the whatever it is next week. I'm not sure, but it's the same show next week is at 7 o'clock on Thursday. We would be back, myself and Ian, so I'm sure you're all going to enjoy that. If anyone is interested in getting into development, this is a new thing for you, maybe dipping your toe in the water and you're thinking, what on earth is all this stuff about this open door show? If you want to come and spend some more time with myself and Ian, then please, you are more than welcome. Write this down, propertyceo.co.uk/roadmap. I'll say it one more time, propertyceo.co.uk/roadmap. And we have a couple of sessions on in the first week in August where you can come and spend 3 whole hours completely free with myself and Ian, and we will tell you all about property development. So if you'd like to do that, come and join us. That'd be great. Okay, let's see what's in the chat box as we wrap up. He's funny and knowledgeable, says Ron with a smiley face. Really missing it. Really missing Eel. I don't need to read this stuff out. Really missing Ian. Will he be back next week? Maybe. Very good. Thank you. Fantastic evening with great content. Another great show, Rich. Great show. Thank you very much. Absolutely fantastic show. The best show that I've ever seen on your own without Ian is probably the best thing I've ever seen. Don't need. Oh, that's actually for my mother. Sorry. Thanks, Mum. Thanks for that. Robbie says, great show, great answers as always. Tom says, thoroughly enjoyed that. Look forward to seeing you next week. Tom, look forward to seeing you next week, and indeed everyone else. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Hope you sleep well tonight on this hot evening. Good night now. Cheers. Bye-bye.